It's funny how you can look back at something and think, how did I not see it? But the truth is, I didn't see it. And maybe that's the scariest part. The night everything changed for me started like any other. I didn't know it at the time, but it would be the last time I saw my life as I knew it. December 24th, 2 years ago. A night that was supposed to be about family, joy, and the holiday spirit ended up being the night I learned my wife had been hiding a part of her life from me. At the time, I thought I had a pretty damn good marriage. My name is Kyle, and I'm in my late 30s. My wife Sarah and I had been married for 7 years, and we had a house in St. Charles, Missouri, just outside of St. Louis. We had a dog, a couple of cars, and a job I hated but tolerated for the paycheck. Sarah worked as a marketing manager at a medium-sized company. Nothing glamorous, but it paid well enough. Looking back, I realize how blind I was. I never noticed the little signs that things weren't as perfect as I thought. Maybe I was too busy with work. Maybe I just didn't want to see it. That Christmas Eve, I came home from work early, tired but ready to spend the evening with my wife. Sarah was already getting ready for her company's Christmas party. She'd been talking about it for weeks, but to be honest, I wasn't thrilled about it. The idea of mingling with her co-workers didn't exactly get my heart racing. But she insisted I go. She said it would be fun, that I'd meet her colleagues and see a different side of her. Maybe I should have trusted my gut and stayed home, but I didn't. I put on my best suit, even though I knew I'd be uncomfortable in it all night, and we drove into St. Louis. The venue was a fancy hotel downtown. It was the kind of place that felt so out of place for me, big, flashy, and expensive. It didn't help that Sarah looked incredible. She had on a red dress that clung to her body like it was made for her. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. It's not that I didn't notice my wife was beautiful. I had always known, but that night, she was radiating something different, like she was trying to be someone else. Or maybe I just wasn't the one she was trying to impress anymore. The party was packed, full of fancy people in tuxedos and glittering dresses. Glasses of champagne clinked, laughter echoed through the ballroom, and Christmas music played softly in the background. People were schmoozing and smiling, but I could feel the tension. The fake energy of corporate parties, the kind of event where everyone pretends to be having the time of their lives. But you know deep down, no one actually cares about anyone else in the room. I tried to make small talk with a few of Sarah's co-workers, but I could feel myself drifting. I wasn't part of their world, and they made it clear I wasn't welcome in it. Sarah was mingling with ease, laughing louder than usual, acting like she was the life of the party. She was a social butterfly, always the center of attention, and I was okay with that. But as the night wore on, I noticed something that made my stomach turn. I met Michael that night. Michael was the vice president of the company. Tall, fit, and in his early 40s, he had the kind of charm that women fell for instantly. He had that smug, self-assured smile, the one that made you feel like you were lucky just to be in his presence. But what bothered me most wasn't his smile or his charm. It was the way Sarah looked at him. There was something in her eyes when she spoke to him, something different from the way she spoke to me, to anyone else in the room. It wasn't blatant. It wasn't like she was standing there fawning over him, but it was in the way she laughed a little too hard at his jokes, the way she kept touching her hair when he spoke. I could feel something in my gut, a sensation I couldn't shake. It was a sickening, instinctual feeling. But I told myself I was overreacting. It was just a Christmas party, just a few drinks. Maybe I was just in a bad mood. But the more I watched them, the more I felt like I was the one being pushed out of the picture. They were too comfortable together, too friendly. At one point, I excused myself to grab a drink from the bar. I was trying to clear my head, but when I came back, Sarah was gone. Not gone like she'd left with someone else or something, but she was just not there. I searched the room, but she wasn't anywhere to be found. I assumed she had gone to the bathroom, but I kept an eye on Michael. I didn't know why, but something about him just didn't sit right with me. Then it hit me, Sarah had been gone too long. I checked my watch. 30 minutes. Half an hour. I felt my pulse quicken as the small voice in the back of my head grew louder. It was like the world around me had slowed down. I needed to find her. I needed to see what was going on. I made my way through the crowded ballroom, past people laughing and drinking, all the while feeling more and more like I was walking through a haze. Then I spotted her. Sarah was standing near a hallway that led to a private conference room. But there was something off. Her body was turned toward Michael, and they were talking close. Too close. The kind of close that should have been reserved for private conversations. The kind of intimate closeness that didn't feel like it belonged in a crowded party. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, but I wasn't prepared for what happened next. Sarah touched his arm, and Michael leaned down to whisper something in her ear. I could see the way she smiled, that knowing smile that I hadn't seen directed at me in a long time. It was like she wasn't even aware I was there. I stood frozen for a moment, watching them. That's when Sarah excused herself, giving Michael one last lingering look before walking down the hallway toward the restrooms. But she wasn't alone. I didn't have time to think. I followed her. I don't know why I followed her. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe I just couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I told myself that I was being paranoid, but deep down I knew. I watched as Sarah walked down the hallway, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor. She wasn't heading toward the bathrooms, though. I couldn't see where she was going, but I could hear the faint sound of voices ahead. I took a few steps forward, my heart pounding in my chest. There was a door at the end of the hall, a door I hadn't noticed before. It was slightly ajar, and from the crack, I could see the dim light of a small room beyond. My breath caught in my throat. The sound of soft laughter echoed from within. I didn't think. I just moved, quietly, like I was invisible. I crept up to the door, pressing my ear against it. And then I heard it, the unmistakable sound of Sarah's voice, laughing. But it wasn't just any laugh. It was a laugh I hadn't heard in years. It was the kind of laugh you only hear when someone feels truly alive, when they're not holding anything back. But then I heard another sound, a man's voice, Michael's voice. I couldn't make out the words at first, but then I heard them clearly, and my blood ran cold. "You look incredible tonight," Michael said. "I've never seen you like this before." Sarah's voice responded, low and teasing. "I think you like what you see." It was the tone of her voice that hit me like a punch in the gut. It was the way she said it, so flirtatious, so intimate. I didn't need to hear any more. I knew exactly what was happening behind that door. I stood there for a moment, frozen. I could feel the anger building inside me, the confusion, the pain, but I couldn't move. My legs wouldn't let me. My mind raced with 1,000 thoughts, each one more brutal than the last. This can't be real. This can't be happening. But it was. And then I heard something else, a sound that made everything click into place. The soft rustle of clothes being removed, the sound of someone breathing heavily, gasping. I didn't want to hear it, but I couldn't stop myself. My eyes burned with the image of what was happening inside that room. I knew. I just knew. I should have turned away. I should have gone back to the party and pretended I hadn't heard anything. But I couldn't. Not after everything I'd heard. I pushed the door open a little wider, just enough to get a glimpse inside. And then I saw them. Sarah and Michael. There was no mistaking it. They were in the middle of it. The sight hit me like a freight train, a jagged wave of disbelief and fury crashing over me. Michael had his hands all over her, pulling her close, his lips on her neck. And Sarah, my wife, she wasn't pulling away. She was right there with him, her back arched against him, her body responding to his touch in a way I had never seen before. They were so caught up in each other that they didn't even notice me. For a moment, time stood still. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I was watching my wife, the woman I had loved for years, with another man. A man who wasn't just any man. He was her boss. He was the one I'd met that night, the one I had trusted her to work with, the one I had told myself was just a friendly co-worker. I could feel my hands shaking. The anger bubbled up, but so did something darker, something deeper. Pain. Betrayal. I wanted to scream, to charge in there and confront them, but I knew I couldn't. Not yet. I had to leave. I had to step away. But just as I turned, a door behind me creaked open, and I froze. "Hey, what are you doing here?" Someone whispered, clearly startled. I turned around quickly, and there she was, Rebecca, one of Sarah's co-workers, standing in the doorway with a glass of wine in her hand. She must have been looking for the bathroom, or maybe she was just wandering. I don't even know what I said to her. I don't remember. My mind was too clouded with everything I had just seen. But somehow, I managed to walk away without giving myself away. I told Rebecca I'd gotten lost and was just about to head back to the party. I don't think she bought it, but I didn't care. I had to get out of there. As I walked back through the hotel lobby, my mind was spinning. I kept replaying what I'd just seen. It was like I couldn't stop the images from flashing in my mind. The way Sarah had looked at him, the way they touched each other. They were so comfortable together, like they had done it 1,000 times before. I don't know how I made it through the night. I don't know how I didn't explode right then and there. But somehow, I made it back to our house with Sarah, trying to act like nothing had happened. I could feel the rage building inside me. Every word she said, every look she gave me felt like a slap in the face. But I kept it together. I didn't say a word. Not yet. The next few days felt like a blur. It was like I was living in some kind of fog, my body moving through life, but my mind stuck in that hotel room watching Sarah and Michael. I couldn't escape the images, the sounds, the betrayal. Sarah didn't seem to notice. Or maybe she did, and she just didn't care. She went about life like everything was normal. We exchanged pleasantries, made small talk, and had dinner like we always did. But I couldn't look at her the same way anymore. I couldn't pretend everything was okay when I knew what I knew. The worst part? She had no idea I'd caught them. I could have confronted her right there, but I wasn't ready. Part of me wanted to believe it was a one-time thing, something that didn't mean anything. But deep down, I knew it was much more than that. I spent the days after the party plotting. I told myself I wasn't going to do anything rash, that I'd take my time and figure out how to handle it. But every time I saw Sarah, I could feel the anger burning inside me. I couldn't even look at her without seeing her in that hotel room, with him, in the most intimate way possible. I spent hours researching. How could I get back at her? I didn't want to just leave her. No, I wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done, to understand the pain I was in. But I didn't want to do something stupid either, something that would end up with me in jail. No, I had to be smart. I had to make her regret everything. And Michael? He wasn't going to get off easy either. I'll admit it. Part of me was consumed by the need for revenge. It wasn't just about getting back at her. It was about reclaiming some part of myself that I felt I'd lost. She had taken something from me, something that I couldn't even describe, and I was going to make sure she felt every bit of it. But I also had a plan. I wasn't going to confront her directly yet. No, that would be too simple. Instead, I decided to sit back, observe, and wait for the perfect moment to make my move. And that moment came a few days later. It was a Sunday night, just after the New Year's holiday. Sarah had been unusually distant for a few days, and I had a feeling she was getting ready to meet with Michael again. She had been texting someone a lot, but she was careful not to leave her phone unattended anymore. I had already caught a few messages from him. Innocent enough on the surface, but the tone, I knew the tone. I knew it well. That night, she got dressed to go out. It wasn't anything extravagant, just a pair of jeans and a jacket. But it was the way she looked when she was getting ready that set off a red flag. She was more careful than usual, making sure her hair was perfect, her makeup was fresh. She even sprayed on a bit too much perfume, like she was trying to cover something up. She told me she was going to meet a friend for drinks, someone from work. I didn't ask too many questions. I just nodded and told her to have a good time. But I had no intention of letting her go without me knowing where she was. As soon as she left, I followed. I knew her routine. She'd stop by a bar in the city, a small, dive-Y place that her work group frequented. I wasn't surprised when I parked down the street and saw her car pull up. I waited for a few minutes, just enough time to watch her disappear inside. But I didn't follow her right away. I needed to be patient. This time, I needed to be sure. I waited for an hour, long enough to get a sense of what was going on. I saw other people coming and going, but no sign of Michael. My patience wore thin, and I was ready to go in. I stood up from my car and started walking toward the door, my footsteps heavy in the cold night air. And that's when I saw it. Sarah and Michael walked out together. They were laughing, leaning in close to each other a little too close. They stopped by her car, standing there in the parking lot, as if they were waiting for something. Waiting for someone to catch them, maybe They didn't see me at first, but I saw everything. Michael leaned in, and Sarah? She didn't pull away. She kissed him. It wasn't a peck. It wasn't innocent. It was passionate, slow, like they'd done it 100 times before. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. It was like I was watching my whole world crumble before my eyes. They were kissing, and I wasn't there. I hadn't been there for months, maybe longer. I wanted to scream. I wanted to rush up to them, pull them apart, and tear into Sarah for everything she'd done to me. But I didn't. I stayed in the shadows, watching as they finally broke the kiss and got into Michael's car. I knew exactly where they were going. I don't know how long I stood there, just staring at them. But eventually I snapped out of it. I went back to my car, shaking, my hands white-knuckling the steering wheel. I couldn't just sit back anymore. I had seen enough. I was done being the victim. It was time for my plan to come together. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. Not after everything I'd been through. Not after watching my wife, the woman I'd given everything for, betray me like this. It was time to make them pay. The days after I saw Sarah and Michael together again felt like an eternity. I knew I had reached a point of no return. The man I had been before, the one who trusted his wife and believed in their marriage, was gone. He had died the moment I saw them kiss. What I felt now wasn't just anger. It was a cold, calculated fury, the kind that you can only sustain when you've been betrayed in the worst way possible. I needed to act, and I needed to act fast. But I also knew that I couldn't just storm in, guns blazing. No, this wasn't some movie where I could walk in and yell at her, or worse, throw some dramatic tantrum. No, I had to play it smart. I spent the next few days tracking them. I watched from the shadows, keeping my distance, making sure I knew exactly what they were up to. Sarah didn't seem to have any idea I was watching. She went on with her life, meeting Michael for drinks, dinners, and late-night conversations. Each time, I felt the anger build higher inside me, but I didn't let it show. I was patient. I was quiet. And then came the night that everything changed. It was a Friday. The weather was starting to get cold again, the kind of bitter cold that bites at your skin. Sarah came home from work that evening and told me she was going out with some co-workers again. I didn't even flinch. I knew what was going to happen. This time I didn't follow her. I knew they'd be at the same place as always, the bar they frequented. But I didn't need to be there. I had something else planned. That evening, I made sure I was somewhere else. I didn't want her to get suspicious. I told her I was meeting a friend, and she didn't question it. She just kissed me on the cheek and left, practically running out the door in her usual rush to get to her friend. But this time, I had set a trap. A small part of me was worried about what would happen next, but the rest of me was done holding back. I called Michael. I had his number, of course. He had always been professional, but I knew how to find him, how to get his attention. I texted him first, making sure it was cryptic, just enough to pique his interest. "You've been busy with my wife. I think it's time we had a talk." He responded almost immediately. "Who is this?" I didn't answer at first. I wanted to let the tension build, to let him wonder. But then, I sent another message. "You know who I am. I'm the guy who's been sitting at home while you screw my wife. But tonight, I'm done being the fool." I didn't get a response for a while. I figured he was either trying to figure out who was behind the messages or panicking. Either way, I was playing him like a puppet. When his phone buzzed again, he was ready to bite. "What do you want?" The next message was the final blow. "I want you to come to my house. We'll have a little chat. Alone." I wasn't even sure if he would show. But he did. By the time he arrived, I was already waiting. I had parked my car across the street, hidden in the shadows. I watched as Michael's car pulled up, and he stepped out looking confused, maybe a little nervous, but still too arrogant to show it. He hadn't figured out what was really going on yet. I could tell by the way he walked up to my front door, like he was ready to take control of whatever was about to happen. The moment he knocked on the door, I knew it was time. I opened it slowly, taking in the sight of him standing there, unsure of what to expect. He wore his usual arrogant smile, though it was tempered with just a hint of caution. "Can I help you?" he said, his voice dripping with false charm. I didn't say a word. I grabbed him by the collar and pulled him inside, slamming the door behind us. He stumbled back, his face suddenly shifting from cocky confidence to shock. "What the hell?" he started, but I wasn't interested in his questions. "Sit down," I said, my voice colder than ice. He didn't move at first, But then something in my eyes must have convinced him that this wasn't just some friendly conversation. Reluctantly, he sat down. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. You've been sleeping with my wife, haven't you? He blinked, his mouth opening and closing like he was trying to come up with some excuse, but I didn't give him the chance. Don't play stupid. I saw you. The kiss in the parking lot, the hotel room. I've been watching you both. I know everything. I could see the panic start to creep into his eyes. Look, man. No. You look. I interrupted. I'm not here to listen to your excuses. I'm here because I want you to understand exactly how much you've fucked up. He opened his mouth to say something, but I wasn't done. I wasn't going to let him talk his way out of it. Not this time. I want you to understand what you've taken from me. My trust. My marriage. Everything. You think you can just walk into my life and take what's mine without any consequences? Well, you're wrong. He stood up suddenly, backing away, his hands up in surrender. Listen, I didn't mean for this to happen. It just did. It's not what you think. But it was exactly what I thought. And it was worse. I'm not here for your apologies, Michael. I'm here for my revenge. I knew what I had to do. But first I needed to get one thing straight. Where is she right now? I asked, my voice low and dangerous. Where's Sarah? His eyes darted nervously, and he shifted on his feet. He wasn't going to tell me. I knew that. But I wasn't about to let him off easy. I told you, I said, stepping closer. I want to make her understand the consequences of what she's done. You've both made a huge mistake, and I'm going to make sure you both regret it. The tension in the room was suffocating. Michael stood there, his eyes darting around, trying to come up with some sort of escape plan, but I could see it in his face. He knew there was no way out. Where's Sarah? I asked again, my voice cold, sharp as a knife. He swallowed hard, then exhaled slowly, like he was about to confess something he hoped would keep him safe. But I didn't need his confession. I needed him to understand how far I was willing to go. She's at the bar, he muttered, looking down. She's meeting some friends. Look, man, I didn't mean for this to get out of hand. I cut him off. You didn't mean for this? How many times does it take, Michael? How many times does it take for you to realize you've crossed a line that can't be erased? He started pacing, his fingers running through his hair. It was just sex, okay? It didn't mean anything. It's not like that with Sarah. I moved closer to him, grabbing him by the shoulder and pushing him back against the wall. My eyes locked onto his, and I made sure he saw the full weight of what I was capable of. You think that makes it better? You think because you're telling me it didn't mean anything that I'm supposed to let it slide? You're not getting away with this. He recoiled, then straightened himself up, like he was trying to regain some semblance of control. Okay. You want to know what happened? Fine. I'll tell you everything. But it won't change anything. It won't change how you feel. I didn't care about his guilt trip. I wasn't there for his sob story. I wanted him to understand how deep his mistake ran. You're damn right it won't change anything. But it'll feel good to see you squirm for a while. Michael finally seemed to realize that I wasn't going to back down. He took a step back, hands raised defensively. Look, man, I get it. You're angry. I would be too. But we both know Sarah. She's not the woman you think she is. She's been distant for months. She's been pulling away from you. And I didn't let him finish. I lunged forward, shoving him back against the wall again, this time harder. His breath hitched, his eyes wide in shock. You think that gives you the right to fuck my wife? I growled. You think because she's distant, you can just step in and take what's mine? You got another thing coming, Michael. He stepped back quickly, looking for any way out of this, but there was no escape. I never meant to hurt you, man. I swear. But we're both adults, and she. Shut the hell up. I snapped. You think you can just justify it because she wasn't perfect? Because she was distant? She didn't owe you anything. I was her husband. She should have respected me. And you? You should have respected me too. I didn't know how much longer I could keep this up, but I wasn't done yet. I had a plan, and I needed him to see how deep the damage had gone. I want you to understand something, Michael. I said, my voice dangerously calm now. I'm not doing this for myself anymore. I'm doing this because what you did to me, to my marriage, deserves more than just a slap on the wrist. I'm going to make you pay. I could see the fear in his eyes now. He had finally realized the depths of his mistake, but it was too late. There was no taking it back. You've made a huge mistake, and now it's time for you to face the consequences. I paused, watching him squirm under my gaze. But it's not just you I'm going after. It's Sarah too. He didn't say anything, just stood there, frozen, like he was waiting for the hammer to drop. He knew what was coming, but I wasn't finished yet. I'm going to ruin her life the way she's ruined mine. I'm going to make sure she knows exactly what it feels like to lose everything. The trust, the love, the security, all gone. And you? You're going to watch. I could feel my pulse racing, the adrenaline pumping through my veins. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about something deeper, about taking back the power that had been stolen from me. Michael opened his mouth to say something, but I didn't want to hear it. He was already a pawn in my game. Get out of here. I don't need to hear any more from you. For a moment, I thought he might fight back, but he didn't. He just turned around and left, his footsteps echoing in the empty room. I stood there for a long time, staring at the door, breathing heavily, my hands still shaking from the confrontation. I had done it. I had taken control, but it didn't feel like a victory. Not yet. There was still more to do. There was still Sarah, and I had just started. A few hours passed before Sarah came home. She was unusually quiet when she entered, like she sensed something was off, but she couldn't place it. Maybe it was the way I stood by the door, watching her as she entered, or maybe it was just the way the air felt thick with everything I hadn't yet said. She smiled as she walked in, her usual fake cheeriness attempting to cover the tension between us. "Hey, babe," she said, tossing her keys onto the counter. "How was your night?" I didn't say anything. I just stood there, my eyes narrowed, waiting for her to catch on. She noticed quickly. "What's wrong? You look, I don't know, like you're about to murder me." "Funny you should say that," I replied, my voice low, controlled. "How about you tell me what's been going on behind my back for the past few months, huh?" Her face went pale as she took a step back. "What are you talking about?" I could feel the walls closing in on me, but I didn't care anymore. I was past caring. I didn't need to sugarcoat things. "I know, Sarah. I know about you and Michael. I know about the affair. You think I wouldn't figure it out?" She blinked, mouth opening and closing like she couldn't find the words. What? What are you saying? You're accusing me of cheating?" "Don't play stupid." I shot back. "I saw you two together. I saw the kiss in the parking lot. I saw it all. How long did you think you could keep this up without me finding out?" Her face shifted from shock to something else, defensive, then guilty, like she finally knew that her time was up. I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," I interrupted. "You've already said enough. I've been sitting here for God knows how long, watching you lie to me, watching you destroy everything I built. I trusted you, but you threw that trust away. For what? For a fling with your boss." She stood there, frozen. She knew she had no way out of this one. I didn't mean for this to happen." "Of course you didn't," I said, my voice rising. "You never do you? It's always someone else's fault. But I'm done, Sarah. I'm done with your lies. I'm done with this whole damn marriage." She looked like I slapped her. You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm serious. The moment I saw you with him, the moment I realized what you'd done, that was the moment this marriage died. And now it's time to put it out of its misery. We're done. I'm filing for divorce." Her eyes welled up with tears, but I wasn't interested in her crocodile tears. She had thrown everything away for nothing. "Please," she begged, reaching out toward me. "Don't do this. I made a mistake. I was lonely, and he was there. It didn't mean anything." "Shut up," I snapped, stepping back. "No more excuses. No more lies. I'm done." I grabbed the papers I'd already printed out earlier, the divorce papers, and threw them on the kitchen table. "Sign them. Now." Her hands shook as she picked up the pen, her eyes red and desperate, but she did it. She signed her life away. She signed the death of our marriage, and I couldn't have felt more relieved. I watched as she left, her tears still staining her cheeks, and I felt nothing. It was over.